say that he was a professional, in a way few composers are anymore. Still, on the whole, he did what he wanted to do, the way he wanted to, and when he was done, he didn't worry over much about what the public thought of it. At the same time, as the 19th century rolled into the 20th, another myth blossomed. To be a certified genius, you must be a rebel and an innovator, if not an outright revolutionary. So Mozart sometimes got painted in those terms, too. Personally or artistically, the notion of Mozart the revolutionary doesn't stand, though the reasons for that are not simple. Yes, he was unusual and prophetic in being a freelancer, but he was temperamentally unsuited to being any kind of courtier, and if he claimed that he wanted a job as a court Kapellmeister or the like, it is a good question whether that sort of work, with its necessary subservience and bureaucratic demands, would have suited him. Politically, it appears that Mozart was progressive in some degree, but we lack any details of his convictions. In any case, there is no indication that he felt rebellious toward the ruling class, among whom were a number of his friends and patrons. It was the actual job of working at a court that chafed him, and he left that kind of job early and permanently. I am saying, then, that the Mozart we all inherited, suffering, penurious, and writing for posterity, was an invention of biographers. At the same time, I have to admit that as a biographer, I have some sympathy with those myth-makers. Who wants to read about a happy man? We'll see. Because I write musical biographies that are scholarly in approach but intended for the broad public, it's part of my job to describe my subject's music. There are two problems with this endeavor. The first is that I don't believe it's possible to capture music in prose other than in technical terms. As is reflected in the title of another book of mine, I consider music to be a language of the spirit beyond words. I think most musicians feel that way. All the same, I accept the need for trying to evoke the music in a book that aspires to convey the human qualities of my subject's art. The second problem is Mozart's art. Over the years, I've written several books about music, and a good many program and liner notes, and I've never found another composer who beggars language as Mozart does. Writing about Beethoven in that biography was easier, because he was usually engaged in emotions and quasi-narratives that could be articulated, and I think he intended his expression to be relatively transparent. That was not Mozart's game. In his expression, he was often involved in shades and subtleties. He did not play with existing formal models to the degree that Beethoven and even Haydn did. Except perhaps in some of Mozart's more or less Sturm und Drang works, there is usually not all that strong a sense of an overall story in a piece. The idea of a work of music as an implied narrative was not in the air until the next century. His works certainly hold together integrally, but it is often hard to examine why they do, using the layperson's terms to which I am mostly adhering in the book. Besides that, a good deal of his music is involved in, sometimes revelatory of, the matter of beauty. Mostly we are not taught about beauty in school because it is perceived as something vague and subjective. Among contemporary artists, beauty has often been regarded as a mushy and bourgeois quality. I believe beauty is real and significant and central to a perception of Mozart, so I've tried to deal with it here and there in the book. But again, Mozart is perhaps the most challenging composer of all to capture in words, because his work is so intimately bound up in what music can do that is unlike what words can do. Music, to repeat, was his native language, and beauty also largely beggars language. Once I had a conversation with the forte pianist Christian Bejaudenhout, in which he said, "We tend to listen to Mozart with ears trained by Beethoven, and that's not the best way to listen to Mozart." That was a musicianly observation, not a theoretical or philosophical one, but it's an insight I've been aspiring to understand and wield ever since. Thinking about his point, I realized that in order to approach Mozart, I had to get out of my head the years I had spent studying Beethoven's music. I also had to get out of my head Beethoven's assumptions.
To keep listening to this audiobook for free, click the link in the description. It will take you to a free Audible trial where you can listen to this and many other books for free for 30 days.